Journey to Heaven. A Buddhist's account of her visit to heaven and the underworld. Volume 1. Australian Chinese Buddhist Research Center Publishing. Part D. The Law of Karma. Sea creatures, all sea-related disasters stem from the karma of killing. October 1, 2018.
In September, I received a mental image. Along a coast where a sea disaster was about to occur, a few gigantic lobsters, all about 7 or 8 stories high, arose from the depths of the sea. Each lobster was wearing a breastplate and holding a flag in one of its claws. It's quite a bizarre sight. Still, the lobsters were awe-inspiring. Beneath them were countless numbers of deceased sea creatures, including big deep-sea fish, other lobsters, crabs, and the like. They harbored an overwhelming level of resentment for the humans who caught and killed them. The lobster generals held on to their flags with composure, as though they were awaiting orders. Suddenly, the lobsters started spinning, and continued to pick up speed. The weather began to change, and multiple storms were brewing directly above. A devastating tempest started to charge towards the coastal cities. Roaring winds and raging waves howled and crashed across the sea. The deceased sea creatures saw it as a chance for revenge. They rushed into the city, bent on wreaking havoc and destruction. They attacked cars, boats, and even buildings that were submerged in water. On a different beach, another sea disaster was about to occur. Many more gigantic crabs, these ones around 10 stories high, emerged from the sea. They stood in a line, with swarms of deceased sea creatures beneath them. Their eyes stared towards the nearby city. I received a message from them. This is a city that developed and prospered from the killing of sea creatures. Heaven has already given humankind enough land and crops to grow the food required to fill every stomach, and yet, to satisfy your craving, a huge number of sea creatures are caught and killed. As sea creatures, the fury that we are feeling can no longer be contained. Whenever the collective negative karma of this area has accumulated to a certain degree and the time is ripe, we will unleash our wrath upon you in the form of sea disasters. Just minutes later, the gigantic crabs stretched out their claws in unison and began to lash the surface of the sea. The ground beneath them shook, creating in an instant an enormous wall of water that raged towards the city. The gigantic crabs rode atop the waves, leading the deceased sea creatures to begin their charge. With their fury and the might of the waves, the buildings and cars in the city were leveled. And yet, amid my shock at the sight, the scene disappeared.